Welcome everyone. This is just a quick update to start off 2024. I have not done a lot over the winter. There are a couple of bonus extras at the end of this video relating to the history of my AC, plus some historical technical data. A slight update on the long-awaited crankshaft. In mid-February they sent an exact date for completion of 14th of March 2024. Let's hope that really happens. I have also returned to help Leo with his two AC bucklands. For the brakes on his red buckland, previously after bleeding, we could not get any pressure from pumping the pedal. The company that overhauled the master cylinder fitted new seals again and tested it. After I installed it again, we could get pressure if the pedal was pumped, but evidently there was still some trapped air. This system has been modified by a previous owner with the pipework rerouted. For my latest visit, Leo had bought a vacuum bleeding kit, and this was a big help, as the brakes started to work. Still not good enough, so we decided to leave it settle and return to it another day. On my AC, the master cylinder is at the lowest point in the system, so if I drive the car a short distance, any trapped air soon collects at the wheel cylinders, ready to bleed again. I also helped out with some minor tasks on the cream buckland. My current project at home is some more electro-plating using replica chrome supplied by Gateros. Firstly, I topped up the plating tank with DI water. I ran the heater and circulation pump for a while before attempting any plating, as I'd not used it for several months. An easy item to test the plating on is this lock striker plate. I used abrasives to remove the plating since the surfaces are smooth. For textured surfaces I would use a chrome stripping tank. I usually start with 280 grit and work my way up to 1000, then 2 stages of polishing with the buffing wheel. Cleaning has to be meticulous, firstly with solvent cleaners and then soapy water. With the plating tank warmed up to about 30 degrees C, I placed the item in the alkaline cleaner that came with the plating kit. About 15 minutes in there. Rinse in DI water, then dip in the acid activator for about 2 minutes. Rinse in DI water again and check that the water forms a continuous film over the metal. Into the tank and adjust the current according to the surface area of the component. You need 0.1 of an amp for every square inch of surface. That's about 15 milliamps per square centimetre. For brass parts like this I plate for 30 minutes or so. Next up, part of the radiator grille that allows access for the starting handle. This is for Leo's cream buckland. He's giving me a rear bumper with good chrome in exchange for plating some small components. A more interesting challenge is this mascot. This is my spare one to use on the buckland. The one on my AC also has a small dent on the front as this one does. I had considered filling them with solder, however the mascot is made from two main parts soldered together and it might come apart unless I make a wooden jig to hold it. The round AC badges are cast brass, the same as the rear boot badges, held on with a single bolt for each one. Since the background to the AC letters has the rough cast surface, I decided to use the electro stripping tank. This only removes the chrome layer and not the thicker nickel layer underneath. This tank also removes dirt and rust, the nuts and bolts inside being quite rusty. Gutierrez have since brought out newer stripping kits, including one to remove the nickel layer. While the mascot was in the stripping tank, I started work on this badge for the buckland's boot lid. Back to the mascot and time to try and remove the nickel plating. Bare brass is visible in places, hence a desire to get it all back to bare metal if possible. I've noticed a small gap in the solder joint at the front end. Also the join along the top is visible. Maybe I should make that jig and get to work with some solder. Well, I'll end this coverage here to get the video published quickly. After the mascot I hope to restore my AC's steering wheel. This has various small chrome plated parts plus a large aluminium boss to polish. Hopefully more about that in the next video. Now to the bonus extras. Last year I did a video on paperwork showing some of my AC's history. I forgot to show you some of Dad's diaries. He used to note down anything to do with cars. Here's his 1962 diary with the entry showing his purchase of the AC on Easter Day, 22nd of April 1962, then took delivery 3 days later. He often noted down the purchase of oil and petrol, usually including the brands and costs. At first he used Cleveland Discold petrol. This contains 15% ethanol and no lead additive, which is interesting now that we have debate on the current E5 and E10 fuels. After Dad consulted the AC company, he changed to lower octane fuels such as SO mixture. I'm not sure what the shots are that he mentions. The second bonus to this video is a full explanation of the mysterious RAC taxation horsepower that applied to cars in the UK up to the 1940s. It causes confusion because it gives a figure completely different from the real horsepower of any engine. Many pre-war British cars had this RAC horsepower as part of the model name, such as Austin 7 and Rover 14. It's well known that this taxation caused British engines to be tall and thin, with long strokes and narrow bores, because the horsepower equation uses the cylinder bore and number of cylinders but not the stroke. It's easy to find the basic equation, which is d squared times n divided by 2.5, where d is the cylinder diameter and n is the number of cylinders. To find the full answers, I've dug out one of my better old textbooks, the Motor Vehicle 1947 edition. There's the original owner's name and date, May 1947. Here is the RAC or Treasury rating horsepower with the short answer to the mystery. The equation assumes a mean piston speed of 1000 feet per minute, an indicated mean effective pressure of 90 psi, and a mechanical efficiency of 75%. That produces the equation mentioned earlier. Be careful where you read your technical explanations there. Here I have a volume of On Four Wheels, nicely bound by my late father. This was published as a weekly magazine in the early 1970s. In their explanation of this equation, the author claims that the 2.5 constant was just an arbitrary number picked out of the air. That is rubbish. Returning to my trusty old textbook, we can learn why the stroke does not appear in the finished equation. In fact, we need to go right back to James Watt, who came up with the horsepower based on the performance of a typical British workhorse. 1 horsepower equals a 33,000 pounds load, moved through a distance of 1 foot in 1 minute. Mechanical power is force times distance moved divided by time, or force times velocity, and times a constant depending on the units of measurement. Note that the 33,000 pounds is the pulling force and not the weight of the load. To adapt this equation to a piston engine, you need to know the mean force applied to the piston, or rather the mean effective force, since part of the time, such as during the compression stroke, the force is acting against the engine output. Data for the pressure inside the cylinder is more readily available, and so the indicated mean effective pressure is then multiplied by the cross-sectional area of the cylinder to give the mean effective force. Next, we need to factor in the distance travelled. As we see here, L represents the stroke and P the mean effective pressure. Small f is the number of power strokes per revolution for one cylinder, which will be 0.5 for a conventional 4-stroke engine, divided by 33,000 to get to the horsepower figure. So far the stroke is still in the equation. Here we see the equation simplified slightly when it applies to a 4-stroke engine. Since 2 times the stroke times the RPM equals mean piston speed in feet per minute, we can simplify the equation further by putting in S as the piston speed. Notice that the stroke has now disappeared. For the RAC taxation rating, we enter 90 psi for the mean effective pressure, 1000 for piston speed, and 0.75 for mechanical efficiency. All those constants combined can be simplified to division by 2.5. By the 1930s, mean pressures and piston speed had more than doubled, and mechanical efficiency was much improved, so the real horsepower outputs were considerably higher. The use of piston speed in the official equation meant that both stroke and RPM had no effect on the taxation rating. I hope you survived that explanation. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.